You get nervous when you're looking at the news and you see hurricane, something forming.
Most of the time, like the storm will come and it won't be too bad. The grocery store open back up, electricity starts coming back on. This time, everything was shut down. Everything was shut down. You was, what, a year without gas or something like that, huh?
Close to it.
Hurricane Ida was a very interesting storm in South Louisiana. We look at photos right immediately after Ida. The water depths were higher than we've ever seen before.
Well, since with the marsh being eaten away, the passes and everything is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and then you got little bays that open up passes and stuff like that. And, I mean, it used to be just a little bit of a change, but now everything's opening up so much, all the lands are gone. There's almost no buffer.
We often kind of talk about how Louisiana doesn't really look like a boot anymore. And historically, it's been a boot shape. And so we're kind of losing that sole of the foot of the boot, and we don't want that to happen.
This has been going on for the last 40 years, and it's in such an expedited rate. You had flourishing communities like Manila Village south of us, and a bunch of other communities that are gone, right? And that's because of the coastal deterioration.
If people were to come to you and be like, well, it doesn't make any sense, hurricanes are hitting you every year, why would you stay? How would you respond to that?
I'm gonna ask them why won't they leave where they at, because they got a natural disaster or something. Everybody got one. Fire, earthquake, mudslide, hurricane. Everybody got one. No matter where you go, you gotta deal with one. So why am I gonna run away from a fight? I wasn't taught that.
Why stay in Louisiana? Because it's part of you. I have lived here for 33 years. I moved here in 1989 with no intention of staying here. I was gonna finish my PhD and I was gonna go someplace else and light the world on fire as the best waterfowl biologist on the face of the earth. Didn't work out that way, and I don't care, because the resources that are here, the wetlands, the woodlands, the people, the culture, are magnificent. They become a part of you. What Louisiana is, in terms of a habitat, and I mean as a habitat for human beings as well as for wildlife, is incredibly unique and inspiring and fulfilling when you participate in it. And a hurricane, yes, it happens, just like earthquakes happen. You know, tornadoes happen, all kinds of things happen. And it's going to structure what you can be. But none of those things is going to change the foundation of what Louisiana is. Louisiana was built by the Mississippi River. It was built by that river changing course, sediments and water spreading out over the landscape. Louisiana is still going to be that. And we need to enhance that, maintain that as best as we can, because we really don't have a choice. I've met New Yorkers, If 9/11 happens 10 times, you're not going to tell New Yorkers, why don't you move? Bostonians, I've been there. That is an incredibly unique and wonderful culture. Rude as all hell, but you're not gonna tell those people, why don't you move? And so here we are in Louisiana with everything we provide to the nation. The oil and gas, the seafood, the carbon sequestration, America's wetland, and the cultural icon that is New Orleans, and the shipping and the commerce that comes through it. Louisiana will never be removed from the processes of the Mississippi River. That's what it's always going to be. The people that are here, it's in them, it's who they are. And so the question, why don't you move? It's a non-starter. It's a non-starter.
Ian Terrio, I'm a commercial fisherman, and I've lived in Lafitte, as far as I know of, pretty much all my life.
Do you know what most people do in Lafitte work-wise?
For work, most people commercial fish. They trawl, they crab, they fish drumfish. Got a little bit of oysters, but not too much.
Would it be fair to say is fishing kind of the major industry here?
Yeah, fishing was the founding industry here. And it's just a family thing. That's what we grew up doing, it's just what we do.
The cultural diversity in Jefferson Parish is just remarkable, all the way from Kenner and Metairie right next to New Orleans, all the way down to the Jean Lafitte, Seven Island community, and even further south, the Grand Isle community of Barry Island on the Gulf of Mexico. You know, we're surrounded by majestic waterways. We're surrounded by national park on every side of us now. When you wake up in the morning with your cup of coffee, you see a shrimp boat, someone going to work. You know, very, very close-knit community, hard-working people. But it really, when it's not storm season, it's paradise.
So Lafitte's one of those interesting communities that's kind of like a little peninsula that kind of leads out from Jefferson Parish. We've got, you know, Crown Point, Lafitte, Lower Lafitte, Barataria. They each kind of are these peninsulas and almost like a little island out there. And they didn't always look like islands sticking out down into the bottom of Jefferson Parish in the Barataria Basin. There were full forests that surrounded them. I'll hear stories from people who would hunt and trap and do a lot of things in the area surrounding Lafitte, where now, when you look at Lafitte on a map, it looks like the island of Barataria. You go across a bridge and they're surrounded by water on all sides, where that didn't exist before.
When I first started fishing with my dad, it was, you know, it was really good, you know. But now it's due to erosion, I guess. Everything's so wide open now. When the tide falls, it falls straight out. When it comes up, it comes straight in. Nothing trickles. And I think that got a lot to do with it, you know.
One of the interesting pieces for me as I came into this job was really looking at the marshland that exists in Jefferson Parish. We have this huge Barataria Basin that goes all the way from the west bank of Jefferson Parish all the way down to Grand Isle, and the amount that has just disappeared in the past, you know, 100 to 50 years is unbelievable.
My dad used to tell me all the time, you know, when I was a kid, they had land here, they had this here, and I didn't notice it until now that I'm remembering when I was a kid that there was something there, and it's gone.
Yeah, okay, so subsidence is one of the most difficult concepts to wrap my head around. The first time someone said, tried to explain it to me. And they told me the ground's going down. I said, where? Here? And they go, yeah, right here. I said, what about over there? Yep. Everywhere you can see is going down, but it's not going down the same everywhere. And so what's happening is the ground is deflating. There's a little bit of water trapped down there, and the weight of all the mud on top is smushing the stuff on the bottom, so the water's working its way up, but the ground's deflating. Once it's really old, like, 30,000 years old, it doesn't go down anymore. But every river across the planet, as it enters the ocean, it's in a valley that was about 300 feet deep during the last ice age. So you have all that material there that's young. So really rapid subsidence in every river valley, at the middle of every river valley. All right, so the water's coming down the river, it's in that channel, and in the springtime it's booking. There's a lot of water, it's squeezed in there, and because it's going fast, it can carry sediment, carry heavy sediments, and it can carry it faster and more of it. As a river comes out of its banks, that water slows. And when it slows, it can't carry sediment as much. And so the first things to fall out are going to be the sands, and then it slows some more, and the silts fall out, and then the clays actually fall out even beyond that. And when it gets to the end, when all that water gets to the end of the river, the water all spreads out at once.
When you look at the Atchafalaya Delta Wildlife Management Area, you can see that the sediment began to build land, and then these arteries, develop through the thing. And those arteries direct and build deltaically, and other arteries form. And it starts to build land, and these other arteries develop. And if there's enough flow, then those arteries develop other deltas. And that's how all of this builds. Sediment is the lifeblood of maintaining and growing marsh.
I would never sit like this. That's cool. Thank you. Sit like the queen. I think one thing that most people need to understand is there is no status quo in Louisiana. All those years ago, we were growing and changing, and the river was building us. It was building us. It would change a course and build another delta. And that was, again, there's no status quo. It was always changing. And then when we severed that connection to the river, we just started to decline.
The Corps of Engineers, this incredible group of men, began to levee the river. You guys know this story. Now we've got all this arable land that we can grow food. We've got navigable channels. We've got places where people can live, and where people live, they build things and buy things and create an economic engine. But when you levee the river, what's it say on the wall over there? Unintended consequences. And so now we have restricted that river. We've kept it from diverting where it wants to divert. And so by doing that, we have deprived the coastal zone of Louisiana of overland flooding, which deposits sediment and fresh water into the marshes. And that's a big problem to the maintenance of marsh habitat in our state.
The federal government, through the Army Corps, built levees around the Mississippi River with no plan to feed that coast. And now you're seeing hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people suffering those consequences for those bad decisions. And the state is working as hard as they can to preserve this coast, but it should be a federal effort because the problem was created in a huge part by the federal government.
It's really left us with a place where salt water is moving further north. And as the salt water moves further north, these plants are sitting in salt water. If it's not able to rinse that salt off, it will start to die. And then you kind of lose a cypress forest and you lose this other marshland, and you're kind of, now you just have empty patches of mud. And the next time storm surge comes, that mud is easily washed away, which is leading to that coastal erosion.
We are losing a football field of land every 100 minutes. I don't even think people can put their mind around that. We have lost the entire state of Delaware, gone.
All right, sound? Sounds good. All right, so start pretty easy. Can you just give name and occupation?
Sure. My name is Bren Hawes. I'm the Executive Director of Louisiana's Coastal Protection and Restoration Authority.
What drew you to all of this work?
Well, I'm from Louisiana. Have spent many hours along its coast, fishing, boating, hunting, all of the above. And so I've just always had a real connection with the coast. And then, of course, spending time along the coast as I have, I've seen it disappear. And I've had just a real passion for wanting to try to restore that ecosystem for everyone in the future, including my children. One of the biggest issues facing coastal Louisiana is the lack of sediment input, right, into our coastal systems. That Delta plain was built entirely by sediment that was delivered to South Louisiana from all over the country and a little bit of Canada, being delivered by the Atchafalaya River and by, of course, the Mississippi River, which is the biggest river in North America. And so we've leveed that river. We've isolated the river from its coastal wetlands that it once built and nourished. For good reasons, for flood control and to improve transportation. It's a major navigation artery for most of the country. But in isolating the river from those coastal wetlands, we've cut off essentially the lifeblood to those wetlands that created them in the first place. And so a big part of Louisiana's plan to restore our coast is to reconnect it with those wetlands. Anywhere in Louisiana where we see the river connected to the coast, we see healthy, vibrant, growing land. Other places where the river's not connected to the Gulf, we see, unfortunately, our land deteriorating and eroding.
There's tremendous amount of support for coastal restoration and protection here in Louisiana. Every coastal master plan that has gone through multiple committees and 2 entire chambers of the Louisiana legislature, it has passed unanimously.
So we have a vision for our coast. It's called Louisiana's Master Plan for a Sustainable Coast. It's a way to make very tough decisions about what we think the priorities for the coast should be. So we can't do everything we want to do for all of our citizens. We can't rebuild our entire ecosystem. We don't have all the money, we don't have all the sediment, we don't have all the fresh water that we need. So within those constraints, how do you make the best choices for our coast? So the master plan employs what's been called a multiple lines of defense approach or a strategy, right? And so the importance of that kind of strategy really came to light in the wake of Hurricane Katrina and Hurricanes Rita in the 2005 hurricane season, of course.
After Hurricanes Katrina and Rita, we really developed this idea of multiple lines of defense. Anything between us and that is what we need.
It really was an eye-opening time, I think, in the state's history, in that we really realized that, man, those ridges, those barrier islands, those marshes are important, actually, risk reduction features because they can slow down and knock down storm surges.
It helps because it's structure. It's something that the water has to hit. It's something that removes energy.
So our multiple lines of defense really begin at the very outermost edges of our coast, and that starts with our barrier islands and barrier shorelines, so places like Grand Isle and Grand Terre in the Barataria Basin.
And then as you move closer in, we need that marsh, we need the mangroves, we need the cypress forest to absorb what's coming before our coastal communities.
And then you get into sort of the more man-made things, so levees, floodgates, flood walls, elevating houses, getting homes out of harm's way by lifting them up above.
Since 2006 to now, Jefferson Parish as a whole, we've elevated more than 2,000 houses. A lot of these houses met certain definitions that FEMA is looking for, and that we really tapped into grants that for a long time most other communities in the nation weren't accessing. You look at a list of properties and FEMA says, oh, if you meet this repetitive loss threshold, 2 or more claims, or then severe repetitive loss, 4 or more claims. At one point in time, Jefferson was #1 in the nation for that, Jefferson Parish. We don't want to be #1 on that list. And so how do we really attack this?
Ida was actually the biggest storm to hit this area, you know. I mean, Lafitte's never been impacted by a storm like this, ever. I was fairly lucky, you know, compared to a lot of people. A lot of people lost everything.
So Hurricane Ida, the wave action was much higher than we've seen in previous events. If you go down to Joe's Landing on the Barataria side, we put up a few signs right there, and we put up one for Hurricane Rita, which was in 2005. The difference is almost a 4-foot difference between previous storms to what we saw in Ida. The way that the storm track came in, really, I mean, the winds in certain aspects were sustained, you know, more than 150, probably had gusts of 180 to 200 miles an hour. And when that wind was coming through with the wave action with it, it really picked up a lot of the marsh that was beaten down over the past, 20 years, especially with the salt water that's moved in, with the BP oil spill, the way that it kind of just degraded the marsh. And now we end up with this marshland kind of being pushed up by the wind into our communities.
As we've talked about, many of the wetlands within the Barataria Basin are no longer there, and so there's not that buffer of wetlands that once was there historically. And unfortunately, with Hurricane Ida, the Barataria Basin, and in particular Upper Lafitte area, was really in the worst quadrant, that sort of northeast quadrant of impact.
Where that storm surge or wave action would have come and kind of been absorbed by those tree forests, now the storm surge is coming straight onto the populated area where people live.
I mean, you're not talking about just 10 to 11 foot of water. You're talking about 4 to 6 foot of mud in certain places on the roads and infrastructure, in people's homes. People opened their door and was to come home to see what they could save, and it was 4 foot of mud in their homes. We got wrecked by the wind. I mean, everything that you could face in a hurricane, worst case scenario, this was it right here.
But the people are very resilient. You know, the people that live in the Lafitte Barataria area, many of them are generational. They've been here with their families, and their families have been here for several generations, and their determination to rebuild and bring their families back has been incredible.
These people, their inner desire to continue on the legacies that they cherish from their parents, their grandparents, and that way of life, their willingness and ability to overcome those challenges and fight so hard is remarkable. And it's just a special breed of people that love this area, love their home, love what it stands for, and is willing to fight every single day through hardship to save it. And it's just remarkable.
This is people who are putting, fuel into our economy. I mean, these are workers that live here. And it's a culture here that is so unique when you spend time here. It's just people who have been here for generations. It's a culture. So the coastal work that's been done is really for the survival of us.
You cross one bridge, you into a different world. And I ain't leaving. That's home. It's just, it's kind of like stepping back in time around here. But you ain't really got to worry about much.
In 15 years, I want to have a community that knows it's going to be okay. We have a lot of levee projects taking off. We have coastal restoration projects, and we have more homes elevated than ever before. But it's going to take some. It's going to take some help. It's going to take the federal government recognizing that they helped create this problem and they're responsible for helping fix the problem.
What we know here in coastal Louisiana is that we need about $1 billion a year. We need that just to maintain and try to make a little headway, but that's about what it takes to maintain, restore, and protect coastal Louisiana.
It may cost a few billion dollars to preserve this coast, but if you don't do it, FEMA and the federal government's gonna have to continue to come here and spend 10 times, 50 times, 100 times that much just in Lafite. And if we don't put money into preserving this coast, at the end of the day, the federal government, the state of Louisiana will lose more money. It's being proactive and not reactive with the coast. That's what this all relies on.